think Joe Joyce perhaps thought he still had his helmet on when he started his fight with Carlos Takam. He took a few blows in the early rounds, but the headline will say he stopped Mr. Takam in the 6th round to ensure he remains on course for, at some point in the distant future, no doubt, a shot at the WBO heavyweight world title. This is After the Bell, Mirror Fighting's boxing show, back after an absence. I'm sure you can guess which of the three of us has had trouble over the last couple of weeks coming to terms with a certain sport not coming home. It was neither me nor Barry Jones. Declan Taylor is also here. Gents, well, Barry, I'll come to you first. As I said, Joe Joyce stopped Carlos Takam in 6 rounds. The headline is good. Josh Taylor was very scathing, really, of the performance on BT Sport there just now. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, it's obviously too. We're all going to say the obvious things. He's way too easy to hit, but he always has been, or throughout his career. It just seemed more evident because I think he was trying to be a bit more aggressive, but without any change to his pattern of his work. So he's still one-paced, which he is. That's how he is. That's fine. But there was no other thought when he beat Daniel Dubois. There was thought to everything he did, and he seemed a little bit faster, even though he wasn't. But it seemed that way because he was thinking about what he was doing. Here, he just thought, "I'm going to make this guy work hard, and then knock him out," which he did, and it worked. So we can't criticize. Well, we can, we will, and we are his tactics because they were spot on. I'll make him work. He can't hurt me, which he looked like. He took a few shots and he was like maybe shook up but never really seriously hurt. But you're not thinking about tonight. You're thinking about, and like we all are, if he's that easy to hit against Anthony Joshua, who would go right at him and get inside, or that long, really fast looping right hand of Deontay Wilder, does he still stand up? I've taken 1, 3, 4 of those, and you tend to think, probably not. And that's the worry. So you're not thinking about this fight tonight where, he did what he said he would do. He would walk through and stop him. And ultimately, in 2 weeks' time, people will forget about what seemed a quite lethargic performance and just remember the result. And he beat Carlos Takam better than his rivals. And now he cements his place as the next challenger for that WBO title.
There were quite a few overhand rights landed from Takam in those first couple of rounds, Dick, but Barry's right. Ultimately, it doesn't really matter in the end. But if you're watching that, as Barry says, with an eye to the future, are you concerned, or is this just a sort of one-off fight that he can improve on?
I think you've got to sort of take a bit of both, really, because I do think that he underestimated Takam, probably for want of a better word, underestimated him and went in there expecting to win comfy, to be honest. And because of that, I think, particularly in the first couple of rounds when he got caught a couple of times, he wasn't switched on like he would be, say, if he was fighting Joshua or Wilder. But that being said, that doesn't mean that he's going to necessarily be able to sort of work out how to defend against that in the next 6 months. Although, having said that, I mean, what we're talking, probably another 18 months, 2 years before he ever gets his hands on Joshua, for instance. So, I don't know. To be honest, I was slightly concerned because I was big on Joyce, big on him giving anyone a hard night. And now I just think that, like Barry said, it's not anything new that we've seen tonight, but it was a worrying amount of shots that he got hit with, big ones as well. I don't know, but he did the job. He got it done. He got it done quicker than Joshua. And I mean, what is that chin made of, to be honest? Because he got hit with how many times? 10, 12, 15 shots, probably 10 right hands on the button throughout the course of 6 rounds and didn't flinch. So, I mean, that's a good thing. But like Barry says, if it's Wilder throwing him, then what happens? Or Joshua. Although, Takam's little, isn't he? He's 6 foot. Just a shade over 6 foot. So it's a different trajectory. So maybe when he's got someone big in front of him, he sees them coming, he defends them better. A bit like he did with Dubois, just a bit more of a salute kind of thing. And when they come from low, he just didn't spot him tonight. But he managed to see him out and stopped him. And I'm sure we'll get onto it in a minute. For me, the stoppage was fine as well.
My worry for him is not that he gets hit too easy, because obviously he does. it was the same shot. No,
Mm.
that's a worry that your brain, as intelligent as he is outside the ring, in the ring, his brain can't figure out I'm getting caught with the same shot. It's like when you keep throwing a jab and you keep missing. Sometimes having the less intelligent you are, the better it is. Sometimes as a fighter, because you tell a fighter in the corner, go out and with that jab, and if that's all you can maintain in your brain, then you'll do that. Even when it's not working, you'll persevere. But when you're a thinker, then you throw 3 or 4 jabs, and your trainer knows that's how you get the win, and that doesn't work. You stop doing it, even though he knows that's the right thing for you to do. Your whole body saying you're missing. This is wrong. Or if you get caught with the same shot, at some point your body's going to tell you, or you got to tell yourself, I got to do this, or I got to stay lower, I got to move something, and he didn't. And that's the worry that the thinking on his feet. I thought he was using his brain so well in the Dubois fight against a different opponent. I know that I thought they would work. They would be an improvement on that. That I thought that was an add-on to him, which he looked much better, more fluent in every movement that he had. And I thought that was going to be the catalyst where he would start to improve. Even at a later age in life, he would start to improve because that experience gave him the flagpole to move on. And he didn't. He's gone. That performance there, to me, different style, as Declan said, of course, but he looked like he's gone back to just, I'm the juggernaut. No, you can't believe in it all. Because you're not indestructible. Nobody is. George Foreman will tell you that, and he doesn't have that raw, as strong as he is and as hard as he hits, he doesn't have that raw one-punch KO power, or it doesn't seem, to be fair. And I think because he lacks a bit of speed in his shot, so it's heavy, but it's not the whipping shot with weight that he maybe needs. So without that, he needs to learn to either get lower, slide in and out of distance. He's never going to be fleet-footed, but he can slide in and out rather than just plod forward, or get closer. I think if your whole style and your whole game plan is to make him work hard and tire him out, he didn't make Takam work hard. Takam worked hard, but it was at the pace that he was working at. So there was no real pressure of presence, I don't felt from Joyce, even though he was in front of him all the time. It was never threatening pressure. And I think so he needs to get closer and risk that shot that he's taking anyway, or sliding out of distance and make him a hard target to hit. Who knows? But there was no improvement on the Dubois fight. That's pretty much what I should have just said. And we finished by now.
as well as like not failing to make adjustments to it, the fact was that Takam didn't have to work for the right hands. He literally just had to slip outside the jab and come over the top anytime he wanted.
Punch low and punch high. That's all he did.
It was there for him every time. So like, it's not like it was a real nice setup or a trap or anything. It was just like, I'm just going to do this every time, and it seemed to work every time as well. So yeah, slightly sort of concerning. Like, even though, like you say, Martin, the headline is, Joyce stops Takam in 6, which is a very good result. It doesn't tell the whole story.
You mentioned the stoppage. I don't want to dwell on it too much. Really, the beginning of the end came very, very, very early in that 6th round with the hook. And then it was almost as if, I think Takam is quite languid in his style anyway. So I kind of think I'm caught between Steve Gray thinking he wasn't throwing anything back, wasn't defending himself, but also thinking Takam's just a bit like that, just a bit almost lazy. But you didn't have any problems with the stoppage.
No, I know exactly what you mean. He sort of was moving in the same patterns that he would do anyway. But when you're not throwing for that long, and when you're getting peppered like that, and you've just been wobbled, basically all you're waiting for there, and we say it sort of every time when we talk about stoppage, you're just waiting for him to get cleaned out. And it was like Steve Gray noticed that and said, "Well, let's not allow that to happen because he's done it. He's about to, it was very early in the round. It was about 30 seconds into the 6th round. Absolutely no problem with that stoppage whatsoever, and that's nice to say.
You have to throw back or do something, and if you are throwing back, it has to be effective. And so he didn't. So at the beginning of that tirade of shots, he tried to fire back a little bit, but unsuccessful. Then he covered up, and if you're covering up and taking shots, and by the way, all those shots from Joyce, though none of them I don't think were any seriously threat, they were all accurate. You've got to fire back. You got hit with that body shot first of all, that will hurt him, and then he went from there. He tried to fire back. Then when he stopped firing back, and then gets hit back after taking 5 or 6 shots without doing anything, then the referee's already on edge to step in before that. So when he goes back on his heels, that's the perfect time. Because you get over criticised then if the next shot puts him on his back and you go, you took 3 shots too many there, ref. Yeah. You know, that's the issue. I got no issue with it. You know, and as a fighter, you know, you got to fire back. I've been there, and I fired back, and I've been there when I didn't fire back. You know, and I have no complaints about it. So you know, he's complaining, but yeah, there was an opportunity for him there, and he knew it where he needed to fire back, and he didn't. So being hurt or not irrelevant. The referee looks the perception that you are hurt to the referee is enough.
One thing I wanted to touch on, Steve Broughton was, I guess, promoted in the corner against Daniel Dubois at very, very short notice when Ismail Salas either had COVID or was a contact, I can't remember. And then, of course, Salas, I believe he still is Joe Joyce's trainer officially, but has been absent for the whole camp this time.
COVID complications again, apparently, with that one.
Yeah. Is there, you know, without casting aspersions, you know, Steve Broughton has obviously done a solid job, but is there a suggestion that maybe that experienced coach is what Joe Joyce needs?
I don't know. I think it was one of them. He got hailed, Steve Broughton, after the Dubois fight, and rightly so. But I'm sure he didn't sort of soak it all in, because he knows that a night like this, where his charge gets clipped a few times and people go, well, he's quite young, he's quite inexperienced. I think it seems to be working okay. I know exactly what you're saying. I think he was saying the right things in between the rounds as well. It's not like nobody was picking up on it. It was just that Joyce wasn't necessarily making the adjustments in there. So, yeah, it's a weird one with Joyce. If you think about it, what's he had now? 15, 20, what was that? His 15th fight or something as a pro? Maybe even less. Yeah, 16th. Yeah. I mean, what's he had now? He started with Salas. He went to Booth for a bit. He's with Broughton. He had Salas coming back. He's, you know, been all over the shop already, and he's only had this many fights. So I don't know. I think allow him to settle, allow him to work on stuff. Yeah, I kind of get what you're saying. I don't think it's good, this thing with Salas and he's not around and whatever. Is he even part of the team? Is he telling him stuff? Is there, how many voices are there in the camp? Not quite sure. But it is this sort of performance where people do start asking questions. So it'd be interesting to see where they go from here. But for me, I think it seems to be looking good.
Yeah, I would never. Again, I just think that you can't remold Joe Joyce. Certainly at this age, the age that he is, and as long as the success he's had boxing the way he boxes, it's almost impossible to change. You can change a little bit, so I don't think you're going to see massive. He didn't seem as good in this fight as he did in the previous, but then and I was one of the first ones to praise Steve at the time, saying if this, I remember saying on Twitter, if this was a name trainer, they'd be hailing him as the best trainer of all time again. Yeah. And because it wasn't a sexy name, the kid never got a mention, and it wasn't fair. But he got the win. If he gets beat, I still think the trainer's only as good as their fighter anyway. That's the truth of it. As much as you can help, the fighter's got to do it. The fighter's got to feel it and think it. You can tell him what to do. Like I said, I'll go back to my point earlier. You can tell him he's got to throw that jab, but if he doesn't feel it, it's not working for him. He's not going to do it. He's not going to do it unless he has no brain, and then you maybe he'll do it for you, maybe, and that might be a success or a failure. Who knows? But a fighter's going to do what he wants to do at the end of the day. But you have to go back to the gym. The corner works. Being a cornerman and a trainer being a good corner and a good trainer are not exclusively the same thing. That's why Angelo Dundee used to come in at the end of camp, pretty much the end of camp for Ray Leonard, and take over, because he was a great cornerman, motivator, could read a fight, but he didn't do the day-to-day dog work, and so it's a different trait. So I think if you don't do it in the gym, you're not going to do it in the ring. And maybe they didn't work on something. Maybe they didn't work on some things that they should have been working on, because they've come off such a big success that they maybe thought the bit more movement they had was in the bag, and it probably wasn't. It probably needed to still be, going over it again and muscle memory and keep doing it. And all this is a guessing game, of course. But I don't think the kid deserves any criticism, because they got the W and a stoppage, and he just got hit loads of times. But he got hit loads of times with with Adam Booth, and he got hit loads of times with Salas, and they're well respected and famous trainers. So we never give them any stick.
Yeah,
Something?
Abel Sanchez as well was the other one.
Abel Sanchez, there you go.
Yeah. So let's not change him. Get him a new trainer again.
Well, I was thinking about training fighters, and I think only fighters who fight for world titles though.
There's
no money in the other stuff.
Could you hold pads for him though?
What's that? I wear those stupid
them shoes.
Those stupid boots that Salas wears. Me and Salas are probably about the same height, aren't we? So we'd be well suited.
I should point out just 13 professional fights for Joe Joyce before anyone corrects us. You mentioned earlier, Declan, it's not implausible that he could be waiting 18 months, 2 years for a world title shot. I feel like he's kind of in a similar situation to Dillian Whyte. He's now faced with the choice between waiting. Now, listen, let's be honest. Fury could never fight Wilder. That fight could fall apart. They could both retire. Usyk fights Joshua, and we have Joyce against the winner in 8 months or so. Okay, that could happen. But if it doesn't happen and Joshua does fight Fury, what does Joe Joyce? He says he doesn't want more tests. He just wants the world title. But you can't surely sit around for that length of time. Where does he go now? How much of a risk does he take now, given where he stands?
Well, stick him in with White. You just said it then. It's obviously never going to happen in a million years because of all sorts of reasons. Boxing fans listen to this show, watch the show. They know for a fact that fight would never happen. So we haven't got to explain why, which is sad, really. But what does he do? You're right. He fights people like Carlos Takam. And to be fair to Dillian Whyte, although he did turn down Joshua and he turned down a final eliminator for the IBF with Kubrat Pulev and all this sort of stuff, and he maintained that path of the WBC. What he did do was he took hard fights in the interim. Oscar Rivas and obviously fought White in pay-per-views and took big, meaningful, lucrative fights. And I think if you're Joe Joyce, you have to do that if you want to in any way be prepared when the call does come. And when you think about it, I wrote this bit in a piece this week. If you think about it, you've got say it all goes to plan and Wilder fights Fury in October, Joshua beats Usyk, Fury wins. They get together early next year. They could have a rematch in the middle part of next year. Who knows? They could have a trilogy fight in the end of 2022 or even the start of 2023. Not a single belt gets fragmented once they're having unifications every time. Talking 2023, summer of 2 years from now, when Joe Joyce is going to have a world title fight. Same with Dillian Whyte. Same with every other heavyweight on the planet. So they've got to fight each other, haven't they? They have to. And really, in the shake-up, who really remembers what belts were on the line in all those great heavyweight fights you can go and watch now on YouTube from the 70s and 80s and even earlier? Like nobody cares. They'll make a lot of money and have great, meaningful, legacy-defining fights without the belts. Let them do what they want. Let Fury and Joshua go and fight. What Joe Joyce cannot afford to do now, if he wants to make any money and wants to leave the sport with any sort of legacy, he cannot sit around and wait for the call because it ain't going to come for a long time.
But and I understand that, and the bottom line is, and when you're old and retired like myself, it's all about the money. But to say you're a world champion for a minute, a day, a month, 2 years, 10 years, to say that is what you turned amateur for, what you started boxing for. Once you started becoming good as an amateur, they were your lofty dreams you never thought you'd get to, and not to have that, but still be successful because of politics or because they're not as meaningful as they once were. It's a travesty for a fighter, for his whole motivation of why he's done it. It all becomes about money, and all this. I hate this. Boxing's a business. Promoters say that. I know boxers are saying it because promoters have rammed it on their throat. Boxing's a business. Yeah, we know it's a business. So is football a business, and so is rugby a business. But we don't say that about them, do we? But they're sports to us, and that's what it is. It's a sport that you can make money from, lots of money from, if you're very good, and certainly if you're very big and very good. The biggest problem is rematch clauses. Rematches are fantastic, and I might have done this already, because I do it everywhere. But rematch clauses should never be allowed. Never be allowed. It's a safety blanket for the champion. Where's the risk in that fight when you know if you underperform, you get a chance to do it again? And also, as with Dillian Whyte and now potentially Joe Joyce and all the other guys down the line, we focus on the guys who are number one challenger. but also it affects number 7, 10, 15, all those guys coming up, because if those titles are held up for 2 years, like Fury and Wilder now, they've held that WBC title now between them since 2019. And how does that help all the other guys? Dillian White can't get a shot, then the guys below him can't get a shot, can't get number one contender to get their shot. They shouldn't be allowed. I mean, you shouldn't be allowed to fight for the title unless it's some sort of controversy. You shouldn't be allowed to fight for the title off a loss. Any title off a loss. Imagine that being. I thought that was a rule at one stage. Imagine that being like set in stone. Unless it's a really controversial fight, you can't fight for a title off a loss. You have to have a warm up again against anybody. It's irrelevant. Just you go back with a win, but then in the meantime, that they can fight someone else.
Would you agree though, based on what you saw today, that Joe Joyce would be better placed to win against Joshua Fury and therefore win a world title, based like if he went and fought meaningful fights now for the next 18 months, 2 years? Would that prepare him better, or would it just put miles on the clock and sort of maybe make him less prepared to win or have the possibility of beating Fury or Joshua? Because that's what I worry about, is you sit around and get stagnant for 2 years. Look at Chris Jenkins today. I know there was all sorts of reasons why he hasn't won for a long time, but you sit around and get stagnant, and then the phone goes, or you're like, oh, hang on a sec, that would be you now. You have a long camp and you train, but you actually haven't had a meaningful fight for 2 years or whatever, and then it catches up with you. Or
you're not ready. You're not ready, but you'll take the fight because you don't know when you're never going to get a chance. I've been there. You don't know. You get a phone call and you're boxing next week, and you don't say no because you don't know when you're going to get a fight again. And I understand that, and I do think the more experience that Joyce can get at the higher level, the better for him. But also his age and taking punches. In the end, your chin won't stand up to shots. It's not bulletproof. It wears everything. Everything has wear and tear. Your body, your mind, everything. And I think that's an issue. So if he gets the opportunity, he takes it now. But stylistically, it doesn't favor well for him with any of those guys. To be honest, I have to be honest. All three of the top guys there, he struggles with all three of them stylistically. I feel, even though he's always going to be hard work, because of big he is and strong and committed he is. But the fact that he's easy to hit means Fury could just dance around and slow at foot, dance around and play around with him. No, Joshua will go right at him in straight lines, but be right in front of him and not give him any space to throw back. And I think that, and Wilder with that long whipping right hand, would test that chin to the max. So, you think he's going to struggle, but that's irrelevant. He's got himself to that position where he deserves a shot. And Usyk as well, his movement will cause him trouble. But he's got a bit more of a chance there, because that's not 5 rounds or 3 rounds, this is 12 rounds he's got to run. Can he do it? You'd have to run against Joyce, that's for sure.
I think Joyce wants to hope that either Joshua or Fury loses and the big one falls by the wayside. He'll be sort of the only people in the Joe Joyce business really are going to be rooting for either of those guys to lose, but it gives them a better chance than done it if Usyk wins, for instance. There'll be rematch clauses and whatever else, but those belts get fragmented away from the two Brits. He's in a better spot. White's in a better spot. While they all are.
I think usually you think if there was a rematch for that, forget it, Fury beats Wilder now, and then Joshua beats Usyk, for example, just say for instance, then them two fights, all the belts stay together because there's so much money involved. The organization's got to be putting pressure on them, but they won't, because the rematch, they get more from that than they would if it was all split up and they had 5 fights each, to the equivalent of that. So you think, but you'd hope that one of those guys would, for the rematch, would just chuck all the belts. That's the way they can do it, to be honest, but they won't. But you think because they're bigger, they've gone beyond that level now, where a lot of fighters haven't. They've gone beyond that level. They really have. They're way above that now. The organizations need them. They don't need the organizations. That's the way boxing has changed now, because there's so much money involved that once you become the genuine number one, you don't need those belts anymore. They need you more than you need them. But yeah, but who knows? He's had against 30. Martin said made this right. He's had 13 fights. He hasn't really had many easy touches in those 13 fights. It's been a massive, for his age, he did the right thing. It's gone longer than I thought, to be fair, those 13 fights, but he's had a really hard apprenticeship, so he's got to the level where he deserves. He could box, what's that fella now who just won a version of the world title? Daniel Dubois. He could box him. Was he WBA Global?
If you
Gold.
Yeah, gold one. But you're right there, Barry. I just got it up here, right? So 13 fights. He's already beaten Carlos Takam, Daniel Dubois, Bryant Jennings, Ustinov, Domin Stavern, Joe Hanks. He even Lemroy Thomas. He kicked it off by beating Ian Lewison, knocked him out. You know, for a debut, that was mad. So
stupid.
You've got to look at that to see the sort of the pace that he's been moved at. And Josh Taylor was on commentary, and it's a similar sort of, it's a different trajectory. But when you look at just the quality, the condensed quality of fighters, Taylor, you know, name for name, Taylor's is better, probably the best in the world in terms of how condensed it is and concentrated it is. But that Joe Joyce's run to now has been mad since he turned over, really. And you've got to take your hat off to it. But we're talking about him hopefully becoming a world champion. And when you get caught that much by Carlos Takam in the space of 6 rounds, then you have got to be slightly concerned about that, regardless of what's come before.
You have. I don't think he can be dramatically better.
No.
But the way he boxed against Dubois was a lot better, and and he'd have more success there. But I don't think he beats any of those guys. That's the truth of it. No, to be honest, I don't think he beats any of those. The top 3, I don't think he beats them. Just don't. Whatever he can do, and you can't reinvent him. So whatever he can do for what he has, I just don't think it works. Because I don't think he has that. I kind of already said he doesn't have that wilder power to start you. I mean, potentially they all got it, of course, but at that weight. But he wears you down and beats you up, doesn't he? Joe Joyce, that's what he does, and also he makes you gas out, and that. So I think he would struggle that way with them guys.
Who would you pick
against that much? I can't see him standing.
Who would you pick? Who would you pick against Usyk and Dillian White? As in, if Joyce boxed either of those guys, if you say the top 3 probably losing, would you give him a chance to either of those guys?
Again, see, I think because the way you can get caught with that overhand right. See, Dillian White gives you so many opportunities to knock him out. That's the thing with Dillian. He's so committed, but he throws a wicked overhand right himself, and the left hook, of course, as well. That's a shot you remember. But with the whip he can get in his shots, I think I would probably favour him, maybe possibly against Joyce. And even depends what Usyk looks like now. Imagine I haven't seen any pictures of him since he's had time now to bulk up, hasn't he? No, to the heavyweight division. His movement, if he can maintain that movement, I think Joyce struggles with him also. To be fair.
What about you, Martin? How would you pick? How would you see Joyce fares against those 5 guys, those 5 top names that we've sort of said? Does he beat any of them?
Who's the 5th? Wilder. Does he beat any of them? No, I think the only one I would give him maybe I'd go 60-40 against White. But the other 4, I'd give him a slim hope, to be honest.
Yeah, and he's not, like you said, Barry, he's not like this concussive, like one-punch guy who's going to pull something out of the fire either, necessarily. So I'll tell you who else throws a mean overhand right, which might give him trouble, is Derek Chisora. That's a fight I wouldn't mind seeing in the next 6 months if he's sat around for opponents.
Are you Derek Chisora's agent?
Yeah.
Who turned up tonight to watch the fight?
Exactly.
This probably his next fight, let's be honest.
Yeah.
I think that's a good fight, though. I think that's a good fight. As good as he throws that right hand, Chisora, for the most part, he slaps with it. So every now and again, he turns over to the knuckle. Shows the natural power he has, because he hurts people with the inside of the glove. If he can turn that over, and no one's been able to make him do that. So he's been with some good trainers, and none of them have been able to make him lift that elbow up, and he throws it overhand right. But if he can do that against Joyce, then he probably could knock him out. But I think that cuffing shot that he throws, I don't think. And the biggest issue for Joyce is just getting a bit of speed on the jab. It's not the coming out. It's not the going out. It's the coming back. Comes back too slow. And if you can just work on that, and you have to, you lose a little bit of power with that, but it makes him safer. I think that's the thing. Or he throws that jab and it always sort of spins or steps to the right. So you got that right hand up there, he can block the hook, but then the right hand is coming this way. It's got to travel more. You're moving away from the right hand, and that will help him. Or dip the head down when you throw it. Like that.
He seemed to do that a lot more against Dubois, and it was like Dubois.
I'm advertising for my job.
I'm just trying to get him in Derek Chisora in another press conference, so Martin, because you know he does. Always good for us journalists, so get him back on the top table.
The thing is, at some point, the WBO will order an interim world title. The longer this, goes on and on.
Yeah, but who cares? Who cares?
No, hang on. Just let me finish.
This better be a good point now.
I'm just trying to help out your boy. So Joseph Parker fights Derek Chisora again later this year. Derek Chisora with the upset win. Chisora Joyce with the interim world title May next year.
I think they all have interim world titles now because if these titles are going to be jammed up, they are in this, and even the IBF are going to wilt at the end because if these titles are going to be held up with these 3 fighters, then or 4 of them, but there's going to be 3 in the mix, and then 2 in the mix in the end, of course. But then and that's going to be 3 years. That's what it's going to be. Then you have to have interim titles. You don't really, but they don't have number 1 contender anymore. They have an interim title. And that's how. Well, the WBC already got Dillian White as there. He's already an interim, Dillian White.
Yeah,
probably. Who knows? Yeah. So he fights for the interim of the super interim. I don't know. Who knows? Like, it's ridiculous. But it's just another belt, and it gives credence to something or somebody. But yeah, it gives a sanctioning fee. I think that's the most important part. But what you want to do, you want to be at the top of the tree. You want to be top number 1, number 2 by the time those titles become available. That's the truth. So, but you also need, as Declan said, you need to take competitive fights. You need to take fights that are going to earn you lots of money. Chisora's a guarantee. For some reason, he's a box office hit, and so that's a fight that will sell well, and he'll build it up well, and he'll earn a lot of money for. And it'll be a fight where he has to. I think a fight that he can win. I think a fight he should win, but he'll learn a lot from it. And there's a risk attached to it as well. But I think Chisora's shouldn't beat anyone in the top 5 in the world. Chisora shouldn't. I'm not saying he won't, but he shouldn't, to be honest. And that's how I feel with Derek Chisora. But I always have, and he surprised me how well he's done against top tier fighters in the past. But that's I think that says more about them than just about him, to be honest. But either way, I think staying competitive, there's a risk attached to that you get beat, and then all your hard work, like Dillian White, all your hard work then is undone. But then you have a rematch clause. They're fantastic ideas. You have a rematch clause, so you never really lose, even when you lose. You just get more money for the other fight, and you win. You go back to where you belong.
Well, I think we can safely conclude that the heavyweight title picture and the division in general is as cloudy as ever.
The right old
after it certainly is. One man looking to, make his path to a world title, I guess, a little clearer is Conor Benn. He is the first headline act, the first fight camp of this summer, and of course Matchroom's first official UK show on DAZN.
Have you both bought your 750 quid tickets for that?
2 actually, yeah.
You got 2 just so you got a bit more space.
I'm still waiting to get a phone call to work.
I've got news for you, Barry.
This is the week.
Hope, yeah.
Well, that's it. If you can't afford £750, if you don't like the idea of streaming, then the only place next week is indeed with the 3 of us. So I'll assume you'll be with us. We'll certainly be here. Until then, do take care.